Have you ever wondered why you keep going back to something or someone you know is hurting you? Not because you want to, but because not having it feels unbearable. Maybe it's a person who never truly sees you, yet their absence feels like oxygen being taken away. Or maybe it's the rush of scrolling at midnight, a drink you don't need, or the need to feel wanted just to remember you exist. You might think you're addicted to love, to chaos, to the high of being seen for a moment and then left in the dark. But what if it's not addiction at all? What if, as Carl Jung once suggested, what we call addiction is often a spiritual hunger, the soul's way of crying out for what's missing? When I say soul, I'm not talking about something mystical or unreachable. I'm talking about the part of you that remembers what you truly need: peace, connection, meaning. The part that knows you deserve something real, but got lost trying to find it in temporary places. Today, I want to show you something different, not to fix you, not to analyze you, but to remind you gently that maybe you're not broken. Maybe what you call addiction is your inner self trying to return home. There are signs of this, quiet but powerful ones. And if you stay with me, you'll start to recognize them in yourself. Because this isn't a story about weakness. It's about the soul's persistence. It's about how our deepest wounds become our most honest guides. And before we begin, take a breath. Let it be deep. Let it reach the parts of you that haven't breathed in a long time. If you ever find yourself lost in the kind of loneliness that feels endless, know this: you're not alone here. You're in a space where we don't judge what you feel, we honor it. If this message reaches you, if it speaks to something inside you, consider subscribing and staying connected. Not because it's a routine, but because this space is for people like you, those who feel deeply, who think they're too much, who carry invisible stories. Now, let's begin with the first sign, the moment when what feels like addiction is actually your soul trying to wake you up. The first sign is this: you don't crave the substance, the person, or the distraction. You crave the feeling that comes right before it. That moment of relief, that soft breath of, finally, I'm okay. Maybe it's the first sip of wine that quiets the noise. The text from someone you shouldn't miss, but do. The notification lighting up your screen, reminding you that someone, somewhere, thought of you. It's not the thing itself, it's what the thing promises. For a few seconds, you feel whole. But what happens when the high fades? When the call ends, or the drink empties, or the screen goes dark? You feel it again, the ache, the emptiness, and you start to believe something's wrong with you. But it isn't addiction, not in the way people talk about it. It's your soul remembering something you once had and lost. Genuine connection, belonging, safety. When Jung wrote that every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism, he wasn't condemning you. He was pointing to something deeper, the soul's endless attempt to find meaning through what the world can't truly give. You're not chasing pleasure, you're chasing home. Sometimes what you call craving is just the heart saying, I need to feel alive again. But because the world taught you to look outward for that aliveness, you keep searching in all the wrong places. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly seen? Not for what you did or how you looked, but for who you are when you stop performing. That question alone can unravel years of pretending. Because beneath every addiction, there's a story. And beneath every story, there's a moment often in childhood where something sacred was forgotten. Maybe you were told to be quiet when you needed to be heard. Maybe you learned love meant proving yourself, chasing approval, staying small to be accepted. And so, without knowing it, you built your adult life around that wound. You chase people who give you the same kind of absence you grew up with. You confuse attention with love. You trade your peace for moments of recognition. You're not weak for doing this. You're loyal to your past, to the version of you that once needed to survive. But here's the quiet truth. The soul doesn't want survival anymore. It wants presence. It wants to rest in the truth of who you are without needing to earn it. When you start to realize this, everything changes. The wine loses its taste. The thrill fades faster, The people who once drew you in don't light up your nervous system the same way, because something deeper inside you begins to whisper, "This isn't what I want anymore." That whisper, it's not resistance, it's awakening. The first sign you're not addicted but searching for the soul is that you're beginning to outgrow what once soothed you. You still reach for it, but now it doesn't land the same. That's not failure. That's your soul remembering what real nourishment feels like. And though this part of the journey hurts, it's sacred pain. It means you're healing. The second sign appears when the things that once gave you comfort begin to make you feel empty instead. It's strange at first, almost confusing. You do the same thing you've always done, follow the same pattern, and yet something inside doesn't feel satisfied anymore. You start noticing it in small moments. The laugh that used to feel like escape now feels hollow. The relationship that once consumed your thoughts begins to feel like a quiet ache. The habits that once numbed you start to expose you instead. It's as if your inner world has shifted without your permission. And maybe that scares you, because losing your coping mechanisms feels like losing a part of yourself. But that emptiness isn't punishment, it's invitation. The soul has stopped agreeing to counterfeit peace. There's a moment, often subtle, when you start realizing that what you called comfort was really control. You drank, you scrolled, you attached, because you wanted to manage pain that felt too heavy to carry. And now, that pain has started asking to be seen instead of silenced. That's the moment the soul begins to speak, not with words but with sensations. A quiet sadness, a sudden exhaustion, a strange yearning that can't be explained. You feel both close to breaking and close to being born. This is the paradox of healing. Your growth doesn't feel like rising. It feels like dissolving. You might sit alone and think, "Why am I so tired of everything?" But that fatigue isn't failure. It's the weight of pretending falling off your shoulders. The truth is, you've carried too much for too long. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The emptiness you feel isn't a void. It's space clearing for something real to enter. For years, your life may have been built on survival instincts, patterns that once protected you. But the soul, unlike the ego, doesn't care about protection. It cares about truth. And when truth arrives, everything false starts to fall apart. That's why you cry without knowing why. That's why you wake up feeling lost even when nothing's wrong. The soul doesn't measure progress in milestones. It measures it in honesty. You're not addicted to pain, you're loyal to it because it once made you feel safe. But there comes a time when the pain stops being familiar and starts being unbearable. That's when you're ready to stop romanticizing your suffering and start returning to yourself. When this happens, you'll notice something beautiful. Your sensitivity deepens. You begin to hear your own silence. You begin to feel emotions that used to scare you. You start wanting less noise and more truth. You stop chasing people who make you beg for love because you've learned how to sit in your own company without collapsing. That's not weakness. That's emotional maturity born from spiritual hunger. The second sign you're not addicted, you're searching for your soul, is when your emptiness becomes more honest than your distractions. When you no longer confuse feeling good with being real. The path forward isn't about cutting things off, it's about listening. Listening to what your body is tired of doing, to what your heart keeps whispering under the chaos. Because when you finally stop running from the silence, you realize it was never empty. It was waiting for you. The third sign arrives quietly, so softly you might miss it. It's when you begin to crave truth more than comfort. You start noticing that you would rather face what hurts than stay numb. You'd rather feel your loneliness fully than disguise it with noise. It's not that the cravings disappear overnight. The patterns still show up. The people who trigger your old wounds might still cross your path. The urge to escape still whispers, but this time, something in you pauses. Something watches. You no longer move automatically. This pause is sacred. It's your consciousness waking up inside your own story. You might find yourself sitting in your car after a long day, staring out the window, realizing You don't want to keep living the same loop. Or maybe you're in a conversation and you feel that familiar sting of being unseen, but instead of chasing validation, you take a breath and choose not to shrink. That choice is the soul reclaiming its voice. The third sign you're not addicted but searching for your soul is when you begin to replace reaction with reflection, when you stop needing life to be constant pleasure, and instead begin to trust the lessons inside the pain. You start asking deeper questions. Not, why does this keep happening to me? But, what is this trying to show me? Not, how can I stop hurting? But, what is this hurt trying to awaken? That's when life becomes something sacred again. You begin to see patterns not as curses, but as invitations. People who wound you become mirrors. Moments of loss become teachers. It's not romantic, and it's not easy. Sometimes you'll cry on your kitchen floor. Sometimes you'll miss the chaos that used to keep you distracted. Sometimes you'll ache for the numbness you worked so hard to escape. But through it all, something deeper is forming a quiet strength that doesn't depend on anyone seeing it. You begin to move differently. You speak slower. You forgive more easily, not because you're weak, but because you understand that resentment is just another form of attachment. The soul is learning to love without losing itself. And maybe, for the first time, you start to feel a sense of belonging inside your own skin. You begin to notice beauty again in the way morning light touches the window, in the sound of your own breath, in the way your body softens when you finally stop fighting yourself. You realize you never wanted to escape life. You wanted to return to it. You never wanted to numb your emotions. You wanted to feel them safely. You never wanted to lose yourself in another person. You wanted to find someone who could meet you where you already are. That's what this journey is. Not recovery from addiction, but reunion with your soul. You're not healing to become someone new. You're remembering who you were before the world taught you to hide. So when you feel the urge to go back to the old coping, the old love, the old ways, pause. Remember that what feels like longing is really the echo of your soul calling you home. And every time you answer, every time you choose truth over escape, you become more of who you really are. And now, we arrive here where the story turns inward, where you've walked through craving, through emptiness, through awakening, and you begin to see that the soul's search isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. There's a quiet reckoning that happens at this stage. You look back and realize that every time you thought you were lost, you were actually being guided. Every heartbreak, every relapse into old patterns, every moment you swore you were breaking it was all part of your remembering. You see, the soul doesn't heal through force. It heals through honesty. It doesn't ask you to cut away the parts that ache, it asks you to hold them, to listen. Maybe you're beginning to notice that your compassion has deepened, that you no longer look at others' pain with judgment, but with recognition. Because you've been there, you've walked through that fire yourself. You know what it feels like to crave love so badly you confuse it with pain. You know what it's like to lose yourself trying to belong. And now you understand that love isn't something you chase. It's something that grows when you stop running from yourself. Carl Jung once wrote that people don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's what you've been doing, making peace with the darkness inside you, realizing it was never evil, only unseen. When you see it this way, even your addictions become sacred. Because they were never the enemy, they were messengers. They pointed to where you were still hungry for meaning, still yearning for connection. So maybe tonight, instead of trying to escape, you could sit with yourself. You could light a candle, take a slow breath, and whisper, "I'm still here." Because that's the truest act of healing presence. The soul doesn't want perfection. It wants your attention. It wants you to stay when it trembles, to listen when it cries, to trust that its ache is not a flaw, but a compass. And maybe one day, you'll realize that the peace you were chasing in people, in substances, in moments, it was always waiting for you in the space between breaths. You don't need to fight your past anymore. You can bless it for the wisdom it gave you. You can thank every broken piece for showing you where light enters. S, because the truth is, you were never addicted. You were never weak. You were searching for the soul that never left you. If these words reach something deep inside you, let them settle there. Let them breathe. You don't have to rush to fix anything. Just know that this space is for you, for your softness, your stillness, your return. And if you want to keep walking this path with others who feel the same, who are learning to live with open hearts, subscribe, share, leave your reflections below. Not because you have to, but because your story might be the mirror someone else is praying to find. You are not lost. You are becoming. And somewhere within all this, your soul is smiling, whispering, "Finally, you've come home."